Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Business English for Success.
Today, we're going to learn how to talk about a project you're working on in English clearly and naturally.
This is useful when a manager, colleague, client, interviewer, or someone from another team asks what you're currently working on.
And sometimes the difficult part isn't finding the English words. You may know your project very well, but still find it difficult to explain it in a way that's easy for another person to follow.
You might start listing tasks, meetings, deadlines, and problems, but the listener may still be wondering, what is this project actually for? What is your role? Where does the project stand now? And what matters most at this stage?
So in this lesson, we'll build one complete project explanation, step by step, so you can see how the pieces work together, and then use the same structure for your own work.
Later, we'll also look at how much information you actually need in different workplace conversations, because a colleague who already knows the project doesn't need the same explanation as someone hearing about it for the first time.
Let's begin with the first thing your listener usually needs, the bigger picture.
Imagine someone asks, "What are you working on at the moment?"
You might answer, I'm working on a reporting project. I have meetings with finance and IT. We're reviewing reports, collecting information from different teams, and testing a new format.
The English is fine, but the listener has to do some work to understand how those activities fit together.
That's common. When we know a project very well, the purpose feels obvious to us, so we start with the details.
But the person listening may not have that context yet, so a useful first step is to explain what the project is trying to achieve. For example, we're working on a project to improve our monthly reporting process and make it easier for different teams to prepare and review their reports.
Now, the meetings, testing, and reporting activities have a clear reason behind them.
You can also say, the main goal of the project is to create a more consistent reporting process across the different teams.
Notice the difference between describing the activity and explaining the purpose. We're updating the reporting system tells us what you're doing.
We're updating the reporting system so different teams can prepare reports more consistently, tells us why the work matters.
That extra context can make the rest of your explanation much easier to follow.
The same principle works outside finance. Instead of saying we're changing some pages on the website and reviewing customer feedback, you could say we're working on a website update to make it easier for customers to find product information. Right now, we're reviewing customer feedback and updating several key pages.
The activities are still there, but now the listener understands what they're connected to.
Once the listener understands the purpose, the next question is usually, what is your part in the project?
A project may involve several departments and many different responsibilities. So saying, we're implementing a new process, tells me what the team is doing, but it doesn't necessarily tell me what you are doing.
That's why it helps to separate the project from your personal contribution. For our reporting example, the project is, we're working on a project to improve our monthly reporting process.
Daniel's role could be, my role is mainly to coordinate the reporting requirements with the different teams and help test the new process.
Now we understand both levels, the overall project and Daniel's part in it.
There are several useful ways to describe your role, but they don't all mean exactly the same thing.
If something is clearly your responsibility, you can say, I'm responsible for coordinating the testing with the finance and operations teams.
If you want to describe the main focus of your contribution, you can say, my role is mainly to gather feedback from the teams and coordinate any changes that need to be made.
And if you're contributing to one part of a larger project, you can say, I'm involved in testing the new process and collecting feedback from the teams using it.
That distinction matters. I'm responsible for suggests clearer ownership. I'm involved in is often more accurate when you're contributing without leading the whole piece of work.
Good workplace communication isn't about making your role sound bigger than it is. It's about describing your contribution clearly and accurately.
So Daniel's explanation can now begin like this.
We're working on a project to improve our monthly reporting process and make it easier for different teams to prepare and review their reports. My role is mainly to coordinate the reporting requirements with the different teams and help test the new process.
At this point, we understand the purpose and Daniel's role. The next useful question is where the project stands now.
When people explain a project, they sometimes tell the whole story from the beginning. First, we had a meeting, then we collected the requirements, then we spoke with IT, then we changed the format.
Sometimes that history is useful, but in many workplace conversations, the listener mainly wants to know the current state.
You can say, we're currently testing the new reporting format with 2 teams. Or connect what you've completed with what you're doing now. We finished gathering the main requirements, and we're now testing the new format. That gives the listener a simple timeline without taking them through every step.
If the work is still underway, you could say, we're still in the process of collecting feedback from the teams, or we're still working through a few technical issues before we move to the next stage.
A useful principle here is the past is most helpful when it explains the present.
So Daniel can now say,
We're working on a project to improve our monthly reporting process and make it easier for different teams to prepare and review their reports. My role is mainly to coordinate the reporting requirements with the different teams and help test the new process. We finished gathering the main requirements, and we're currently testing the new format with 2 teams.
Now, the listener knows what the project is, what Daniel is doing, and where the work stands. But a real project often contains far more information than you should put into one explanation.
A real project can involve deadlines, open questions, risks, dependencies, decisions, and problems. Trying to include all of them doesn't automatically make your explanation more useful.
So after giving the current status, ask yourself, what is the most useful thing for this listener to know right now?
Maybe it's a priority. Our main priority right now is getting feedback from the teams using the new format.
Maybe it's a challenge. The main challenge at the moment is making sure the reporting requirements are consistent across the different teams.
Or maybe progress depends on something else. At the moment, we're waiting for the final data from 2 departments before we can complete the testing.
You don't need to add a challenge just because you're talking about a project. The point is to select the information that changes the listener's understanding of the current situation.
And the right information can change depending on who you're speaking to.
If you're giving a manager an update, a delay, a dependency, or a decision that needs attention may be important.
If a colleague casually asks what you're working on, they may only need the basic context and current stage.
This is the difference between giving more information and giving useful information.
A clear project explanation isn't necessarily the most complete one. It's the one that gives the listener the information they need for that conversation.
Let's add the current priority to Daniel's explanation.
We're working on a project to improve our monthly reporting process and make it easier for different teams to prepare and review their reports. My role is mainly to coordinate the reporting requirements with the different teams and help test the new process. We finished gathering the main requirements, and we're currently testing the new format with 2 teams. Our main priority right now is getting their feedback and identifying anything that needs to be adjusted before we introduce the process more widely.
That's already a complete and useful answer for many workplace conversations.
If there's a clear next step, you can add it to show where the project is going.
For example, the next step is to review the feedback and make the final changes.
Or, once that's done, we'll introduce the new process to the remaining teams.
And if the timing or outcome isn't certain, your language should show that.
You might say, if testing goes well, the next step will be to introduce the new process across the department.
Or we're hoping to complete the testing by the end of the month.
That's often more accurate than presenting an uncertain plan as if it were already confirmed.
So Daniel could simply finish his answer with, if testing goes well, The next step will be to make the final changes and introduce the new process to the remaining teams.
Now the explanation has a clear direction, from purpose to current situation to next step, without needing to tell the listener everything about the project.
So far, Daniel's project is moving forward in a fairly clear way, but real projects are not always that neat.
Sometimes you're waiting for another team. Sometimes the timeline isn't final. Sometimes a decision hasn't been made yet.
Imagine you're reviewing a supplier onboarding process. You could say,
We're currently reviewing our supplier onboarding process to make the requirements clearer and reduce delays. My role is mainly to coordinate the operational requirements with the teams involved. We've completed the initial review, but we're waiting for legal to confirm 2 points before we can move forward. So the timeline isn't final yet. Once we have that clarification, we'll decide when to begin testing the new process.
Notice what this answer does. It doesn't pretend the project is more certain than it really is.
It explains the purpose, your role, the current state, the dependency, and what can happen next.
that's useful because professional communication often involves uncertainty, not just completed tasks and fixed deadlines.
We've built the explanation piece by piece. Now let's hear what this sounds like when another person is actually asking questions about the project.
And notice something important. In a real conversation, you usually don't deliver one perfect paragraph and stop. You give enough context to get started, and then the other person asks about what matters to them.
Let's begin with Daniel's reporting project. This time, his manager is asking for an update.
So, Daniel, how's the reporting project going?
It's moving forward well. We finished gathering the main requirements, and we're currently testing the new reporting format with 2 teams.
And what's your main focus at the moment?
I'm mainly coordinating the feedback from those teams and working with IT on any changes we need to make before the next stage.
Have you run into any issues so far?
Nothing major, but we found a few differences in how the teams interpret some of the reporting requirements. We're reviewing those now because we want the process to be consistent before we introduce it more widely.
Is that likely to affect the timeline?
At this stage, we don't expect a significant delay. If we can resolve those points during testing, we should still be able to complete the final changes by the end of the month.
And what happens after that?
Once the testing is complete, we'll review the feedback, make the final adjustments, and then start introducing the new process to the remaining teams.
Okay. Keep me updated if any of those issues start affecting the timeline.
Will do. That conversation contains almost everything we've been working on, but Daniel didn't give all the information at once.
He started with the current status. His manager then asked about his focus, the issues, the timeline, and the next step.
That's much closer to what happens at work. You need a clear structure in your head, but you also need to respond to the direction of the conversation.
And notice the language around uncertainty. Daniel didn't say there won't be a delay. He said, at this stage, we don't expect a significant delay.
That leaves room for the situation to change without making the answer vague.
Let's try 2 more projects. This time, listen for how the conversation changes depending on the work and the situation.
Imagine you're working with several departments on a new internal system, and a colleague from another team asks what you're working on.
What are you working on these days?
I'm involved in a project to replace our current expense approval system. The goal is to make the approval process simpler and give finance better visibility over pending requests.
Are you working on the technical side?
Not directly. My role is mainly on the operations side. I'm helping define the approval requirements, testing the workflows, and coordinating feedback from the teams that will use the system.
How far along are you?
We've completed the initial configuration, and we're in user testing now. A few departments are testing the system with sample requests before we move to a wider rollout.
Has the testing gone smoothly?
Mostly, yes. We've identified a few cases where the approval rules need to be adjusted. For example, some requests involve more than one department, so we're working out how those should be routed.
So, when are you expecting to launch?
We're aiming for next month, but that depends on how quickly we can resolve the remaining workflow issues. We should have a clearer timeline after this round of testing.
So there are still a few things to resolve before the rollout.
There are, but that's exactly what the testing stage is for. It's better to identify those issues now than after the system goes live.
Notice how different that answer is from simply saying, I'm working on a new expense system.
We understand the purpose, the speaker's actual contribution, the current stage, the issue that's being worked through, and why the launch date isn't completely fixed.
And the speaker doesn't pretend to own the technical work. I'm involved in is more accurate here than I'm responsible for the system.
For the last conversation, let's make the situation a little more difficult.
You're working on a customer onboarding project. A manager knows the general background, but wants to know why the project hasn't moved to the next stage yet.
Where are we with the onboarding project? I thought we were planning to start the pilot this week.
That was the original plan, but we've had to move the pilot back slightly. We're still waiting for final confirmation on 2 compliance requirements.
What's causing the delay?
The requirements affect some of the documents customers need to provide, so we don't want to finalize the new process until we know exactly what needs to be included.
Is there anything your team can do while you're waiting?
Yes, we're using the time to finish the internal guidance and prepare the training materials. That means we should be able to move fairly quickly once the requirements are confirmed.
Do you have a new date for the pilot?
Not yet. We're hoping to get confirmation by Friday. If that happens, we should be able to agree on a revised pilot date early next week.
Is there any risk of this affecting the overall launch?
There could be if the confirmation takes longer than expected, but at the moment, we're trying to protect the overall timeline by completing everything else we can in parallel.
All right, let's review it again once you have the confirmation.
Sure, I'll send you an update as soon as we have it.
This is where Project English becomes much more useful than memorizing a polished answer.
The project isn't going perfectly. The date has moved, there's a dependency outside the team's control, and the final timeline isn't certain.
But the speaker can still explain the situation clearly. What changed, why it changed, what the team is doing now, what remains uncertain, and what happens next.
That's the kind of project explanation you often need in real work.
We've now heard the same core skills working across several different projects, but there's one more decision you have to make in real life. How much of this information does the other person actually need?
If a colleague already knows Daniel's reporting project and asks, "How's the project going?" Daniel could simply say, "It's going well. We've finished gathering the requirements, and we're testing the new format with 2 teams now. We're waiting for their feedback, and then we'll make the final changes."
He doesn't need to explain the purpose because the colleague already knows the background.
But if someone from another department asks, "What project are you working on?" Daniel needs more context.
He could say, "We're working on a project to improve our monthly reporting process. I'm mainly coordinating the requirements with the different teams and helping with the testing. We're testing the new format at the moment, and if that goes well, we'll introduce it more widely."
Same project, different amount of information.
Before you answer, it can help to ask yourself 3 questions. What does this person already know? Why are they asking? And what do they need to understand?
That helps you choose the right level of detail instead of giving the same prepared answer in every situation.
Now think of one real project you're working on. If you're not working on a project right now, use a recent one or any piece of work with a clear goal.
Start with one sentence for the purpose. What is the project trying to achieve?
Then add your role. What are you responsible for? Or what part are you involved in?
Next, explain where things stand now. What has been completed, and what are you working on at the moment?
Choose one thing that matters most right now. A priority, a challenge, a dependency, or simply the next important piece of work.
And if it's useful,
finish with what happens next.
You don't need all 5 pieces every time. For a quick conversation, 2 or 3 may be enough. For a longer update, you can add more context. The goal is not to memorize a script. It's to organize your information so the listener can follow what you're saying. So the next time someone asks what you're working on, try giving them the bigger picture before you give them all the details.
Explain what the project is for, make your own role clear, say where things stand, and choose the information that matters for that conversation.
Then add a next step if it helps the listener understand where the work is going.
And the best way to practice is to use a real project from your own work.
Thanks for practicing with us today.
If you'd like more practical English for real workplace communication, subscribe to Business English for Success.
Keep practicing, and we'll see you in the next lesson.
See you next time.